All right, I think we can go ahead and get started.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Rachel, and thank you all for joining us tonight. Today I'm joined by Haley Cook, and we're going to be talking a little bit about, public service, engineering, and sustainability. Haley, as we kind of move through this, we're going to generally try to follow like a, set prompt. But, if anybody has any burning questions or anything they'd like to ask as we go through it, please feel free. But we will, of course, open it up for the last 10 to 15 minutes for Q&A from, students. But yeah, just jumping right into it. Haley, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your, career trajectory, degree path, and maybe currently what you're doing.
Yeah, well, thank you guys for having me. I'm Haley Cook. I am currently a senior engineering project manager for Charlotte Water. So I'm working in our design and construction team where we do some in-house design for things like water and sewer pipe throughout the community. We also help provide some technical support for various initiatives for Charlotte Water, as well as just various projects. So I support engineering in a smaller sense now, but I was previously in the capital engineering group where I worked on some larger sustainability initiatives and electrification and supporting the city as like a liaison with sustainability at large with Charlotte Water. So wearing a couple different hats, some of those stuck with me in my new position, some of them I'm still trying to hand off. But I think that's one of the pros of being in a company like this, is that you get to really pursue some of the things you're interested in, as well as your regularly assigned duties. So yep, I'm in engineering. I have my PE in North Carolina. I went to NC State for my environmental engineering bachelor's degree and have since done various side quests of horticulture or just continuous learning. I feel like that's one thing I've stuck with, is when I get bored or something, I can just take a class online or in person and continue to learn, because you're never done. That's generally where I'm at right now. What was your other question, Eric?
No, that's kind of a good start. For those of us that don't know, could you maybe explain a little bit about what a PE means?
Yes. So a PE is a certification in North Carolina that says you're a professional engineer licensed to practice in the state. Those certifications vary by state, but they're generally about the same. You must have an undergraduate degree in engineering or something related, and then spend 4 years almost apprenticing under someone. So you have to work under a PE for a minimum of 4 years, and then take another test that proves that you're competent in your field, in which case you are then you have to apply to the board to get your certification, and then you can become a PE. So it's a little bit of a lengthy process, and something that I think takes a little bit of commitment to see through. It's not like being a doctor or something. You don't have to go through 12 years of school, but it does require usually a minimum of 4 years higher education and then experience in the field.
No, awesome. And thank you for breaking that down. I realize not everybody has a background in engineering, so sometimes those licensures can get a little bit a little muddy.
Yes.
But yeah, no, as we're moving through and we're learning a little bit about your career path, I mean, what had you moving towards environmental engineering? And maybe could you kind of explain that pathway and towards the public sector, actually?
Yeah. So I know many people take a roundabout route to get to their final career trajectory. Mine was a little more direct. So from a young age, I was in Girl Scouts. I learned a lot about my community through that program. And I was able to get involved with a lot of sustainability and like learning through the Discovery place and visiting a lot of places that I could volunteer and help clean up a garden or help build something. And so my senior year, I was working on my Girl Scout Gold Award, which is a process too, where you have to, you have to complete certain tasks to then be eligible to apply for your gold award. And then you must do a project that'll support your community and educate someone in your community. At the same time, I was also doing a senior project in high school where you had to write a paper about something you cared about. So two worlds collided. I was really interested in being a hippie and saving the world. I thought that I could do something great to help my community. And if I doubled down on this, I could get there. So I wrote a big long paper about what sustainability means. And looking back now, it was very basic. I did not understand sustainability in high school, but it set the dominoes in motion. I also did a project where I was like building children's playground equipment out of reclaimed materials, trying to be sustainable with my build. And so I put that together and thought, oh, environmental engineering. I like math. I like doing things in my community. Want to save the world. Let's be an environmental engineer. So I went to NC State and majored in environmental engineering. Plot twist, environmental engineering at NC State is mostly water and wastewater treatment. I did not know that. And so I got into these classes and learned a lot of chemistry, a lot of processing and engineering and physics. And I think it helped me create a more realistic goal of what I could achieve with sustainability, because it really put a theoretical concept into something concrete where I could design something that would be built that would make a direct improvement on my community. And so I think that was the big draw for me to engineering, was that I could see that difference being made. So I did environmental engineering. I needed a job right out of school ASAP. So I took one of the first jobs I could get, and it was designing pipes for a consultant, doing stormwater systems design. I did not like the root of my job being for profit. It was long hours and a great opportunity to learn. It really was. Would encourage others to go out there and just hit the ground running hard. But it was not where I saw myself. So I quit and volunteered with AmeriCorps for a cycle. They have a environmental track in Knoxville, Tennessee area where you can learn about various water quality issues. So I served with the city of Oak Ridge, Tennessee, and learned a lot about what it meant to be a public servant, because it was less engineering, less let's get it done right now, let's build something, and more about how do we understand the actual root of the problem and what our community needs, and then tailor our approach to what they're asking for, instead of just coming in trailblazing and saying, this is what you need, this will solve your problems. And I really, really appreciated that experience. I got out of there, took a job with a different consultant to do stream restoration design, and had a friend recommend Charlotte Water as a great place to work. And so eventually made that transition, and I've been growing here for the past couple of years. So that's the big long story of it.
No, and thank you for that. Usually when we have these sorts of talks, it's always helpful to know, the pathways that people can take and what leads them, and how all of those sort of touch in the sustainability sphere. So I think that's really important to drill down into. And I guess with that, we've touched on, well, the importance of water, water quality and issues like that. What do you see currently as like probably the biggest challenge in your day-to-day for ensuring sustainable water access or water management, especially for Charlotte Water?
Well, if we didn't make it clear, I do work with Eric.
That was not, no, we kept that a secret, but yes.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay.
So he might know the nitty gritty of the struggles that we've reached when trying to be sustainable. I think that there's a real struggle of balancing reactivity to planning. And I think sustainability requires a certain level of planning to see the full life cycle analysis of something, right? So if you just go out there and get the gimmicked most sustainable item, it's probably either there's no shortcut, right? Like you can't have something that is cheap, fast, and good quality. There's a whole bunch out there in the world about prioritizing selection of processes, but I think it's really difficult to match the fact that a utility has to react to immediate problems, things like sanitary sewer overflows. So if you don't have enough pipe capacity, so if your pipe's not big enough, it could back up and then create an issue. And that's something we have to react to quickly. Or a pump might fail at one of our facilities, and we need that pump to be operating 24/7 because we've really tried to be efficient in our design, and so we don't have a bunch of excess sitting around waiting to be used. We have 2 pumps, so if 1 or 2 of them go down, we need to replace that immediately. And so you're being really reactionary to the things that happen in a utility. And it's hard to do a full life cycle analysis on a pump that you need in a week and make it sustainable. So I think that's just, we're crunched for time and we're reacting to things. And so it's a balance of, if we can postpone something and take that extra effort to do some analysis on it, that's wonderful. And I think that makes a huge difference. Otherwise, we just need highly educated staff that have sustainability as a lens in everything they do. And they can make those decisions quickly based on like their back pocket knowledge. So just being able to be nimble and already be in the sustainability mindset. Yeah.
No, and I think that's a great point. You know, kind of speaking on balance as well as like flexibility. How have you seen public utilities kind of meet that balance with financial constraints as well as environmental goals and regulatory constraints?
It's a challenge. I think it's one of the larger challenges we face. Sometimes city departments can have dedicated staff that manage their sustainability and can push through specific initiatives geared towards sustainability without having to have costs in the forefront. I think that's a little bit of a luxury, and most utilities probably are not in that state. So it's really about coordinating with your staff and have everyone turning the ship in the same direction. Cost is always going to be an issue. Business and engineering, and we all have to value engineer what we're doing. And so it's really important to make sure that you're getting a high quality product and that something's going to last. And I think that's a pitch we make a lot, to say, hey, we'll go ahead and invest a little bit more in something that's higher quality because it's sustainable in its nature, that it will be more efficient in energy usage and it will last longer. And that is part of the root of being sustainable, right? Something that has a longer lifespan, could be repaired by our staff. You don't have to have a full replacement. Those are things that are marginally more expensive, but have a greater return. So the little things do add up, but grants are helpful to a lot of municipalities that are looking to be more sustainable, and really creating a business proposal for the sustainable approach. So looking at that full life cycle really does help make it a fiscally responsible decision.
No, and I think it's always important to emphasize that, you know, whatever costs are taken on by utility sometimes do trickle down to the people living there. And there's some feet dragging in response to making those changes.
Yeah.
But you touched on it briefly. And I asked because our previous speaker, Shannon O'Shea, worked in community finance, so grant opportunities and loan opportunities for small businesses in North Carolina. And could you maybe expand a little bit on the types of grants or funding options that might be used for environmental initiatives with either utilities or townships, just for everyone's information?
Yes, I won't get into any specifics because I feel like grants are changing all the time, and
Yeah.
you have to keep your thumb on it to know what's coming up and what's available. So a grant expert is probably your first stop. I would not turn to someone like me for for that. Having said, I have tried to partner with the city of Charlotte for some electrification grants. So that was something that was eye-opening to me. There are local grants that you can get from your city for smaller projects. The state of North Carolina and other states are major hubs for applying for federal grant funding and creating their own grants. So there's a lot of different approaches. I would say partner with a regional coalition if you really need funding for a larger project, and reach out to your state representatives to see if they're supporting a grant request from the federal government, because a lot of times it's easier to get that funding from the state than it is to go directly for a federal grant. Some staff that I know recently went to a grant writing workshop. So there's a lot of places you can get more information. They have some templates on how to write grants. They can show you like the hierarchy of how they're distributed from a federal perspective and a state perspective. So I would seek out an expert if you're interested in a specific topic, but it does help to have something in mind. If you're going for electrical improvements, if you're going for a community improvement, if you're going for, like we might go for pump upgrades, or we might go for electric vehicle charging stations. So having that target of what you want to achieve will help you.
No, and I appreciate the insight too. I think it's helpful to know that there are other opportunities for funding outside of just direct out-of-pocket costs. And I think that's always important to emphasize that occurs even with larger cities or larger organizations. But yeah, no, you've touched on it a bit in regards to electrification or EV access. And I was wondering if you might be able to kind of expand on some either successful or unsuccessful sustainability initiatives within your role.
Yeah, I will say that's one thing working in a government department is that things do require a lot of review and authorization from different tiers of approval. So things don't always happen as quickly as you'd like. I was in my role for more than 2 years previously doing electrification work, and I think just now we're getting to a point where I have the support of our entire Charlotte Water to proceed with some of these things, just because there's a lot of different perspectives that you have to get on board. We're a government entity. We really want, that democratic approach of having support from everyone. And we don't want to impede operations. So that's another, thing you'll run into if you're trying to do a sustainability goal. It might sound really good and be really good for the environment, but if it slows down your current operations, that's a huge hit that just can't happen. So you really do have to vet these initiatives before they can be rolled out. I think our electrification initiative has been awesome, and we've had great support from our leadership and other divisions. It's just an effort in education and outreach and installing actual infrastructure to make it feasible. So we recently have installed a lot of chargers that have made it more feasible for our staff to get electric vehicles, which I think is a huge win. It's also been a struggle because financially it's a big investment, and that's just not something that's as prioritized right now as some of our other operations. So it wasn't quite a great win on my part, but by pulling in the right people to be on my team and to help talk to people that may have previously had different perspectives, really getting that team support has made the whole program a success. So I tell people a lot of times when they ask me what I do at Charlotte Water, I'm like, I don't know. I just try to help people. And that's really what it's come down to with our sustainability initiative at large, is just pulling more people in the room. That way, maybe they can create a lens on their work to pursue sustainability. And I don't have as many specific lists of achievements that I've done, but I do continue to hear positive feedback on some of the applications we're using. We're getting ready to get on board with some city initiatives and some city applications that they were pushing for that we had to, send them a lot of information about, because we have separate systems that do billing, or a lot of sustainability is like electrical usage, and you often need meters to report back on your electrical usage. And organizing all of that data is a time-consuming effort that doesn't return a lot of accolades, but it does make progress towards being more sustainable at large. So it's the small wins. We have a team of people who are pushing forward, and that's a win in my book.
No, absolutely. I think, sometimes it's harder to market a smaller win, right? Versus some of the larger wins that are going on. But at the end of the day, it's still, path forward. It's still movement. And those small things do eventually add up. I guess a little bit outside of the professional questions, what kind of environmentally friendly or sustainability related initiatives do you have going on at home or in your private life that you might be, excited to talk about?
Yeah, small things too. I have recruited my family to be a little more sustainable in their everyday life. So I started from a community that was maybe a little more, I will say, quote, "the world is our trash can." And so doing small things like eating a little healthier, eating a little more locally, going to farmers markets to get food. And I started a garden at my house, and so now I grow some food at my house. I created rain barrels to capture a lot of the runoff from my roof. I've planted trees. Trees soak up so much water and runoff in our environment, and if we continue to plant those in our small spaces, it really does add up to a larger change. So little things, educate your friends, get them interested in going to community planting events, plant some trees in your space, grow your own food, or just try growing something edible and see how it goes. It really does change your perspective when you go out in the community and see that elsewhere. But the city of Charlotte has a lot of volunteer opportunities to help with things like Tree Charlotte, or the city of Charlotte, our stormwater department has stream cleanup volunteer events. There's a lot of ways to get involved and give back to the community. So just the little things.
No, and thank you for that. I mean, frankly, I have a bit more of a lazy approach to gardening, but it has worked out, and there is something extremely gratifying about walking around in your yard and finding that, oh, hey, I succeeded in growing something without even knowing it. So those little steps make a big impact. And I do want to emphasize that, even though a lot of our listeners are out of the Raleigh area, those community initiatives and those kinds of volunteering opportunities are always around, and it's always important to just help out where you can. But I did notice that we had a question from the chat from Noah. I don't know if you'd like to ask it through or turn your mic on to ask it, but if not, I can also read it.
Yeah, that's fine. My question was really about, I have an idea of either creating a company that creates sustainable technology or being a company that goes into other companies and sees how they can implement sustainable initiatives in order to be more sustainable while remaining profitable. And I know you talked about that and the initiatives you're starting. I wanted to get your perspective on do you think it's more effective for an outside company to come into like companies and like tell them if you implement these strategies, you can be more sustainable while remaining profitable or saving this much money? Or do you think they kind of stem from within the company? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I'm gonna give you one of those ambiguous answers that say both. Um, no, I recently went to a conference that talked a lot about this, and there's a lot of value in both. So Charlotte Water is a larger company, and we have a lot of staff that are experts in their field, and I feel like we have the resources to lean on that expertise. Um, that being said, it is helpful to have a third party perspective come in and highlight some things, especially when you're trying to get leadership or maybe some people who are a little further detached from the everyday work on board for a complete overhaul of your decision making. I think there is value. There's a lot of consultants out there that do come in and help provide that feedback, and I think it does have a lot of value. It does personally. I think it would be very helpful for someone interested in that to spend some time in a company that they would like to target and see how those operations work. Because coming in with a broad level and saying, you know, you could do these processes to fix yourself and be more sustainable, but if you don't know how that trickles down into their budget effects or how that will affect their people that have boots on the ground, it'll be really hard for implementation, which is where a lot of strategic plans, I think, fall flat. So yes, there's probably a ton of value in that. But I would recommend anyone pursuing it to do your homework and maybe spend some time with your target audience and see what they think.
Okay, that sounds great. Yeah, so get involved at the base level first so you can understand the whole picture.
That would be my recommendation. Of course,
Yeah.
there's a ton of ways to approach it. But
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, and thank you, Noah. Rachel, I think you also have a question, so I feel like I gotta let you speak.
Yeah, so my role here at NC State, one of the big projects I work on is a lot of career development around sustainability. I think I've seen a lot and talked to a lot of folks when identifying like what major skill do you need to be successful, especially for a career within sustainability, has been like stakeholder management. And I've seen that across various industries because sustainability really requires you to talk to various departments within your organization or even various organizations that you might be partnering with. And I find that is a difficult skill to learn because it requires, really solid communication, adaptability, and things like that. And it sounds like you've had experiences kind of in different realms, you know, getting through the stakeholder management process. So I guess what experiences helped you develop that skills, or like what tools have helped you develop that skill? Sorry, that was like a very long question.
No, I think you are hitting on some of my hardest pinch points, honestly. And that's a skill I really hope to continue developing because I've had a little bit more of a technical background. So it's a new lens for me. My personal approach has been to pull in people that I know have more experience with that. So I have a skill set that I've developed. And when some of these tasks, such as strategic planning or large long-term capital investments, they fall outside of my realm, I think it's helpful to bring in someone who is an expert in that, even if it's just facilitating meetings, to help them guide the conversation. I do think that being confident in yourself and coming with facts and having done your research goes a long way with people. So one of the things that our stakeholders, I think, really like is when you come with a problem and a solution. So if you just come to some of these larger decision makers and you say, hey, can you make a decision on this? Or, hey, can you make us more sustainable? that is such a large request from them that they will probably say, yes, go for it. But that's too broad. So give yourself some guardrails when you go to ask for feedback, so that way you're guiding in the direction that's actually feasible for you. So if you're asking for permission to continue an initiative, have the end goal in mind for your program. That way they know what you're doing and you don't have to keep going back to them for additional approval throughout the process.
Wonderful. Thank you for that response. And I just want to like kind of double down on the point of like asking for other people that have expertise in other areas, because I think it proves kind of the idea that we need everyone to be like working in sustainability, and it doesn't really matter like what is your strength. We need everyone with all different strengths to be able to make these projects happen. So it's not just like we don't just need technical people. We need people that are good at marketing, communicating, and implementation people, project managers. So we need everyone. So yeah.
Yes, that's one thing. Technical people might be great at giving you data and facts and figures, but you have to be able to communicate that and organize it in a way that's digestible to your audience. So yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'll echo the importance of learning how to communicate technical concepts to people that's not their everyday, and making sure that something is digestible to people in leadership or people in different sectors, and it's that kind of communication that's key. But we kind of with Rachel's question, we touched on skills, and I was wondering if you might have any skills or experiences that you found like the most valuable in your career so far. And if you'd be willing to share some of that.
Yeah. Obviously it depends on what your end goal is, or where you see yourself, or kind of how you are as a person. I really appreciate companies or schools that give you some of those character assessment or skill assessment tests, just because it helps you understand yourself a little bit more. One thing I've found that has really helped me, and sometimes it's a little difficult to pitch it to everyone, but it's to ask questions. I think there's a balance, but being curious really helps you learn what you need to learn. I don't like going to a meeting or going to a workshop or something without asking a question, because if I'm asking about it, then that means that I've internalized it, and I've forced myself to take something away from it that's relatable to me, and so that I can get something out of it. And I think it's really helpful for others to try to ask questions, because either you'll find out, I know everyone says there's not a dumb question, and there's on-topic questions. So I would encourage everyone to try to ask on-topic questions, not to just speak to be heard, but to really find a way to relate whatever situation you're in, or whatever class you're in, whatever speaker series you're in, and ask a question. That way it relates to you and you get something out of it, because then you're engaged. It's more exciting, it's relatable, and you grow. And learning and growth is really a skill. I don't think anyone should ever forget how to learn, because you're going to college, you're taking classes, you're learning how to learn, and you develop that skill. And if you go 4, 8, 10 years without trying to learn any new information, you really put yourself in a difficult spot, because you've trained your brain to stay put instead of trying to expand. And you've gotten comfortable, and comfort is complacency, right? And so I think asking questions really just drives home growth, and applies to all jobs. I can ask a question in college, and I can ask a question in my workplace, and I can ask HR questions, I can ask procurement questions, and I learn something that helps my job and helps me, even if it's not directly related to them. I understand how we work together more, and that makes it more efficient.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think everybody should be a lifelong learner. There's all kinds of information to pick up, and it's always important to ask questions when you can, which is no pressure to everybody listening, but we do expect questions. And I guess moving on, for students or early career professionals, do you have any advice on how to go about, oh, how to go about moving into a role in either water resources, the environment, sustainability, or even the public sector that you wish you knew?
Yes and no. I think it really comes down to finding out what your values are and where you want to be. So if you're interested in the public sector, there are so many opportunities. There really are. You can get involved in local government, state government, your county. You can do your town. You can volunteer with a local nonprofit. There's so many ways to give back. But I think more than being involved with water or a local government is figuring out what your driver is. And if your driver is to make your community a better place, then find companies that have the same core value. Find companies that are shooting to make a difference. And for me, that meant going to the source, which was the government or the utility sector. And so I kind of like Charlotte Water is enterprise funded, so it's not tax based. It is solely from our ratepayers. So if you're a customer, and because we're essentially not for profit, that hit home with me and really helped drive home the fact that we're just here to provide water and sewer services to our customers. And that's available in most communities in America. There is an opportunity to help with your water or sewer, or if you don't have water or sewer, if it's a private entity, you can help with the local government that usually has a contract management with those entities, or HR that manages so much of the interface with the customers, your citizens, or private companies providing that service. So I liked engineering. I thought it made sense. I was one of those, I like math. And environmental engineering had that value of impacting my environment. So that was the match for me. Other people might see environmental stewardship or environmental science, but you don't even have to have the word environmental in it for it to have a sustainable impact. Sustainability is a great route, but you could get into marketing, and most utilities that I have come across have a need for all of these services. As Rachel was saying, that everyone needs that everywhere. So set your goal, do some research, and if you have questions or if you want to get connected, reach out to someone like me or Eric, and we can point you in the right direction to find someone to talk to one-on-one, or just hear you out. Because really what drives a successful career, I think, is valuing what you're doing. So sometimes it helps to talk with someone who's maybe tried a couple different things or is where you see yourself going, so you can find a direct path for you. I don't think there's a one size fits all, but it's out there.
No, and thank you for that. It's refreshing to just kind of have like a holistic view of what drives you in a career, or what what you find important as somebody entering or looking to make a change in the workforce. And I guess just as like a closing question, and I always find this an interesting one to ask, but are there any trends or initiatives or innovations in your field that you're excited about? And maybe expand on that a little bit.
Oh, there's a lot of stuff coming. Some people brand it as AI. I am really excited about the data management opportunities that cloud-based platforms and smart technology are able to provide. Things like dashboards, congregating data in a way that you can see it quickly, and that's accessible to all your employees. So however you want to call it, I think advanced tech integration into the workplace is something I'm really excited about. Our staff has been working with different platforms. Some of them are a little antiquated, and we have some staff that are on the forefront of pushing us into the next age. And that can be anything from virtual calls to just cloud-based sharing. I mean, we've gotten to a point where I can request comments from people on engineering plans on the cloud. We can digitally sign things. We can reduce our footprint with less paper, going paperless. We can organize things that you can get to them in a much faster way with like GIS models. And I'm just really excited about all that.
No, and that's always important to hear too. And I think it's important to emphasize that what may seem a little bit more basic to some folks, you know, especially working within the public sectors, some of those things are slower to turn around. And it's like steering a ship. So, you know, that kind of emphasis on integration and communication is big when, you know, there may not be a consistent way of saving all of that good data that they have access to. But yeah, thank you for that, Haley. And I guess, yeah, we'll open the floor up to any questions. I know, I believe Helen, you had a question for us. I don't know if you'd rather me read it or if you'd like to just ask it, feel free.
Yeah, I was interested in the problems of the cost of sustainability that are long-term returns instead of just short-term. And, you know, for example, reducing flooding by stormwater projects that are costly, but, you know, in 50 years may save lives and that kind of thing, and how the way you balance that.
Yeah, that's an awesome, that's a good point, a good question. I'm not at a point right now where I'm able to tackle anything like that, but our decision makers for the city and for a larger enterprise entity do have impact on which projects get done, and how we're prioritizing those. And I think Charlotte and Raleigh have done a great job of looking at that life cycle analysis of projects. I do think it's important for people who are interested in those or pushing those projects to have a good pitch and to really educate the decision makers on why it's so important, because it takes a lot to move from that reaction mindset to like, oh, this place is flooding, now we need to fix it, or this bridge is, you know, being undermined, to planning ahead and budgeting for that. So keep trying. But see if you can catch the ear of your decision makers. You can, you know, write to your state, write to your local representatives, you know, let them know that it's important to you and that you think it's something that should be acted on. Or if you're in your workplace, maybe see if you can get lunch with your director and just talk about how these things are pressing on you and that's something that you think is valuable.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no quick fix, right? But I will say there's other things that we've done, and I haven't really talked a lot about it, but collaboration is huge. So other departments are doing work nearby streams or nearby communities that are struggling with this kind of issue, you know, flooding, your pipes are undersized, or, you know, you're in a floodplain. But if multiple people have a slight interest in there, if we have a sewer project near a stream, it really benefits us to talk to each other and collaborate, and we can save money by doing more at the same time. So talking to other people who might have something in the vicinity is something I spend a decent amount of time doing as a project manager. And I don't know that all project managers do that, but I'm looking on all of the online platforms. I'm Googling, you know, street names in the area just to see if there's anything that pops up that could be overlapping. So if there's a stream section that might be flooding regularly, maybe it could be rolled into something else, and then two birds, one stone, which is much more cost efficient.
All right. Well, thank you, Haley. Does anybody else have any questions?
Can you tell us more about how you got interested in horticulture?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I wanted to eat better, and I wanted to landscape my house and I wanted to learn more. I do design on pipes and hardscape type things for work. And so it seemed counterintuitive not to know more about the plants and the soil and all the other things that are directly impacted by our projects that we just don't focus on. I took like one soils class in college, and they didn't talk about microbial interaction. They just talked about tensile strength. They talked about the structural properties of things, not the ecological benefits. So I was just interested. And so I took some classes, and I was like, well, this is great. I'm going to watch a bunch of YouTube on this. And then I took some classes at NC State to get my undergraduate horticulture certificate, because I called them, said, hey, I want to learn more about horticulture. And they were like, this seems like the right fit for what you're interested in. And since then, I've just been signing up for random online education opportunities. Reason to get your hands dirty, get outside.
Absolutely. And if anybody's ever interested, NC State has a really great series of resources on native plants and native horticulture. If you're interested in low impact, as well as, biologically, well, maybe not ecologically familiar plants for pollinators, it's a great resource for that.
Yeah.
But Candace, I think you had a question as well.
I did. Are you able to hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good. I'm not walking with my speakers on, and they're not always very reliable. Yes, I kind of hate to ask this question. This is a two-part question. What keeps you up at night, and what are you most excited about?
Yeah, that changes probably every 6 months. Last year, water lines were keeping me up at night because I was afraid that they weren't going to work properly. So sometimes construction, but most recently, I'm trying not to let anything keep me up at night, because I do think it's important to have a nice work-life balance. And previously, I've been really bad at that. So it varies, but continuous access to water throughout our community, something that really worries me. Growth over the next 10 to 20 years in all large municipalities is something for us to be concerned about. But what am I most excited about? Personal development right now, honestly. I think being an expert in your field is wonderful, and it will get you really far. But there's kind of a playbook. So if you figure out what you want to do, you can ask somebody how to get there. At least that's my perspective. If you push yourself enough on a track and try hard enough and learn enough, then you can probably get to where you're going. That's not the case for everyone. And there are so many roadblocks, but if you can imagine it, I have no doubt that every single person on this call can get to where they want to be. You're already in a community and a program that is putting you on the right track. So I'm excited about learning more about myself, figuring out what I want to do for the next 50 years of my life, and where I want to develop over the next 10 years. Because I set a 5 and a 10-year goal coming out of college, and I was on track to do that. And I think it's time to dream bigger, and that's an option for everyone, to just think outside the box and figure out what you want to do. So, long answer. Sorry.
That is great and very inspirational. Thank you. I have a follow-up, if you don't mind me asking, to something that you said about efficient water supply and development. Is there anything we can do to encourage developers to be more responsible instead of clear-cutting lots for the
Oh.
sake of water conservation and to help absorb the water, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A lot of those restrictions come from your local development ordinance. So in Charlotte, it's the Unified Development Ordinance. Raleigh has one as well. Sometimes they call it the UDO, but that is where the restrictions often get set for what developers are allowed to do. And that gets enacted by usually a city or county planning team. It could either be engineering planning, landscape planning. They usually have like overall community planning. So there's a lot of people that feed into that. But if you can get in front of those people or become one of those people or be on city council where they adopt those measures, I think that's the most direct way to make that kind of change. Otherwise, you're kind of playing catch up or trying to, do a one-off where you're telling one developer, oh, we'll partner and make a big change in this one project, which is also super valuable. But those laws or restrictions really guide development.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, great question. I think it's always important to emphasize just development, and I think in some of the courses we talk about that endless growth for the sake of growth is not always to everyone's benefit, and that can still apply to even the development of a city. And there are aspects that play there that you need to consider. And I think just hearing it kind of from the source is always good to hear as well. But yeah, does anybody have any other questions?
You guys are business, so obviously if you want to help your personal private business be more sustainable, tell them it's a marketing pitch. Get community support by slipping some of these initiatives into your projects by branding it and selling it to those stakeholders as a profitable mission. More customers, more happy customers, you're reaching more people. You're going to meet less lawsuits, or you're going to have less adversaries in the city or from those, local nonprofits. So spin it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an important point, but otherwise, unless we have any other questions, I think the only request I have for those of you listening is Rachel will be sending out a brief survey just to get some information about our listeners and to help us plan these programs out more in the future. Well, awesome. Yeah, and Haley, thank you again for all these, for your time and the opportunity to get to ask you all these questions. Yeah, I hope everybody has a great evening and stays warm. Hopefully not everybody's going to get buried in snow. So
thank you guys for having me. This was fun.